Hey guys, Ike here from IkesOutdoors.com. Welcome to a beautiful spring day here in Missouri. Temperature's awesome, but it cannot decide whether it wants to rain or not. So we may end up cutting this short if it does end up raining. Right now it's just sprinkling, but it has kind of kicked up into a little more than that. What we're going to talk about today is tuning our used bow. This is the final chapter of our used bow, and it is the most important. Tuning your bow, you can get your bow shooting absolutely perfect. If you do these methods that I'm talking about and the methods that I'll show you, you'll get your broadheads and your field points shooting exactly right. And the thing about tuning the bows is I'm better at tuning bows than I am at shooting bows. So it's kind of like a rifle. You know, my guns can outshoot my skill level. Same way with my bows. My bows can outshoot my skill level. I can tune a bow and have it absolutely set dead on perfect, and I will not shoot up to the capabilities of that bow. So it's absolutely crucial to have that, though, especially in the woods, or if you're going to shoot competitively as well. So these are the simple ways that I tune my bow, and I'm going to go through each one of them step by step and show you how I do them. I'm also going to show you these flashcards that I have, and these are available on my website, IkesOutdoors.com. And I'm actually going to link them below, so you can actually hook to that link, click on that link, not hook on that link, click on that link, and you can actually go and you can download these tuning cards, which we're going to be flashing them up here during the videos. We'll have them all put in here as we talk about them. But you can actually go and you can download these tuning cards and print them out. And I printed them out and laminated them. And then you can take those with you to the range. You can take them with you when you're sighting in or shooting your bow, and it'll help you have that reference right there with you. Or you can do like I do. I have a notebook that I keep all this information in. You just kind of amass your own little notebook of tuning methods. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about sighting your bow in, which is the first step. Then we're going to talk about, and here comes the rain now, we're going to talk about sighting your bow in. We're going to talk about paper tuning your bow, walk tuning your bow, and then the final step that we're going to do is we're going to broadhead tune your bow. Now I have the bow here, and I've thought about different ways to do this video, and I think this is going to be the best way to convey what I'm trying to say, is by just staying here basically talking, because I can sit here and I can take my bow out and shoot, but I'm only going to run into specific problems if I do that. Whatever problems the bow has is what I'm going to run into. If I sit here, I can show you the flashcards, and I can talk about every possible scenario that we have, and I can put the flashcards down here in the video, and it'll show you what you need to do in that scenario. And then when you run into that scenario when you're tuning your own bow, you can reference the flashcard. You'll know what flashcard you need to reference, and you can go back. So I think this is going to be the most effective way to show you guys effectively how to tune your bow. So the first thing we're going to talk about is sighting your bow in. There's a very, very simple rule when it comes to sighting your bow in, and that rule is follow your arrow. I've done this video before. If you want to get really in depth with it, you can go back and check one of those videos out. But the real simple rule is follow your arrow with your sight pin, and that means if you shoot to the right, you move your sight pin to the right. If you shoot to the left, you move your sight pin to the left. If you shoot low, you move your sight pin down. If you shoot high, you move your sight pin up. Very, very simple thing. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to get a combination of those two things. You're going to be shooting high and right. I fix one problem at a time. Fix the right, move your sight to the right, follow your arrow. And then when you get the right and left down, you're hitting dead center. Then I'll move my sight up, and I'll, bring that arrow down, and then I'll address that situation. And then as you get more comfortable with sighting in your bow, you can address multiple issues at the same time. But what I do generally is address one issue at a time as I'm going. So you'll see these on our website, and these are these little flashcards right here. And this one shows you, have your bullseye here, and the arrow impact is the green, and it says move sight down, follow your arrow. Each one of these is going to say it's pretty much the same thing. There it is. This is, if you're facing it, it's to the right. It says move sight to the right, follow your arrow. Move sight down, follow your arrow. And here's move sight up, follow your arrow. Here's the combination. We got a high and right. So on this one, you would actually move your sight up and to the right, which you're going to be facing this, so it'd be that right in that way. And that's that's pretty much all you need to do when it comes to sighting in your bow. Now, I move up pretty close when I shoot my first initial arrows. I move up to 10 yards or something like that and shoot my initial arrows. just to make sure that I'm going to hit the target. And if I'm way off at 10 yards, I'll go ahead and sight that thing in at 10 yards. Then I'll move back to 20 yards and I'll sight my bow in at 20 yards. Once I'm comfortable that I'm going to hit the target, I'll move back to 20 yards and sight it in there. At this point, that's all I'm going to do as far as tuning goes. I'll go back later and I'll sight in my 30, 40, 50 yard pins. But your 30, 40, and 50 yard pins are going to be the same rule will apply to them that will apply to your 20 yard sight. And like I said, at this point, all you need is your 20 yard pin sighted in. So while I'm doing my tuning, I'll step back to 20 yards. I'll get that thing as accurate as I possibly can. I'll get it thrown up as good groups as I possibly can, and then I'll move on to my second step. Now, my second step, this is kind of an outdated method, and I don't do it anymore. And the reason I don't do it is because it really doesn't tell you a whole lot. And if you have imperfect form, you're going to have a problem with paper tuning anyway. And I have imperfect form. I think most archers do. So I end up having tears that are due to an issue of my form more than anything. So what paper tuning is going to do is you're going to set up a rack. I have a rack, a deal I bought from 30-06, and it has a paper on it. And you're going to basically move back to 4 to 6 feet from the target. I'm sorry, 4 to 6 yards from the target. And 4 to 6 yards from the target, you're going to shoot an arrow through that paper and into the backstop behind it. And your arrow, when it comes through, should form a perfect bullet hole. It should look just like that. How many ever veins you got? But it should form a perfect bullet hole. You should see where your arrow went through, and you should see the 3 veins as they went through behind it. If that's the case, then your bow is perfectly paper tuned. Now, one of the things as a new archer that paper tuning does help out quite a bit is arrow selection and selecting the proper arrow spine. I know for me, I've done my setup for 25 years now. I know how my setup's supposed to be. I know if I'm shooting 65 pounds or 70 pounds and I need a 350 spine arrow. I know if I knock down to 60 pounds or lower, then I need a 400 spine arrow. But what this is really going to do, paper tuning is really going to tell you what your arrow is doing in the air. If you're getting, say we got a left-hand tear. If you've got a left-hand tear, what is happening is your arrow, when it comes out, it's actually flexing. And at that distance, your arrow should already be stabilized and shooting straight. So what it tells you, if you got that left-hand tear, is it actually tells you that your arrow is kicking out and it's continuing to flex too far away from the bow riser, and it shows you your arrow spine is too weak. Now, if you get the opposite tear, if you get a right-hand tear, it shows you your arrow spine is too stiff. Your arrow is basically coming out, kicking to the right, and staying that way for too long, and it's causing a right-hand tear. So that's where paper tuning is useful, especially if you're a guy who doesn't know exactly what spine you need. It will show you what spine you need. There's also some other things that you can do to show, with the arrow tuning, to get things lined up and get to be shooting that perfect bullet hole with paper tuning. But if you're like me and you have bad form, it's not going to really do you a whole lot because you're going to get false tears. The left and right hand tear are going to show you whether your arrow spine is, left hand is too weak, right hand tear is your spine is too stiff. A low tear and a high tear are going to be basically your arrow is coming through and doing this or doing that, and that is your knocking point. There, if you have a low tear, you need to raise your knocking point up. Your arrow is basically coming down and doing that. If you have a high tear, your arrow is basically pointing too high and it's coming through and doing that. So you can do all those things with paper tuning, but I address those problems later on. I address those problems with other types of tuning. So you can check out the link below and you can download these cards and it'll show you exactly. You can see there's a lot of detail on here. These are front and back. There's a lot of detail on here that I'm not covering because it's just a whole lot of detail, and plus I honestly don't know how much paper tuning helps. If you have bad form, it doesn't help at all. And a lot of our other tuning that we're going to do here, our next step, actually is going to eliminate a lot of the things that you do with paper tuning in a much easier, much simpler manner. The next thing that we're going to do is in our tuning steps is something called walkback tuning. And what walkback tuning is, it's really going to fine-tune the center of your rest and your center shot. Your manufacturer is going to recommend 13/16 from the riser, 3/4, something like that, to the center of your arrow, and that's generally a good place to start. That's a perfect place to start. But it's generally not always right, and it really, I've had bows, I can work on the exact same model of bow from back to back, and when I go to walk back tune it, you get different results. So different bows, even if they're the exact same model, exact same poundage, everything's the same, will tune just a hair different. So walk back tuning is going to fine tune the sitter shot of your bow. And what you're going to be doing here is you're going to shoot 3 arrows. You're going to shoot at 20, you're going to shoot at 25, and you're going to shoot at 30. And when you do this, you're going to use your 30-yard sight pin, or your 20-yard sight pin, even at 30 yards. And what you want when you're said and done is you want your arrows to all fall in this nice straight line. And you're going to have to do this a few times. I really like to do this walk back tuning, and I also do French tuning, which we'll talk about in just a second. But you're going to want that to fall in a nice straight line. If it doesn't, using the exact same sight pin, your sight pin at 20 and at 25 and 30, you get something like this or something like this. It shows you that your rest is not centered, and it'll show you which way you need to move it. So basically, if your arrows are shooting off to the right, you need to move your rest in the opposite direction. You need to move it to the left. So if you have something like this, where at 20 you're hitting dead center, at 25 you're off to the, it's hard for me to do this, off to the left, and then at 30 you're even further off to the left, you need to move your rest to the right. So the rule is, whatever way your arrows are falling, you need to move your rest in the opposite direction until you get this absolutely straight, perfect line. Now, for a lot of guys out there, and I struggle with this from time to time, you'll shoot 20, 25, and 30 yards, and you won't feel comfortable that you made good shots. And you can do it quite a bit. And I've tuned for guys before and done this walk back tuning, and they just never really put up a good stretch of 3 shots. And you're really tuning a lot of problems. You're fixing problems that aren't there because they're just making bad shots, and I'm guilty of it as well. Another method you can use is French tuning, and I don't have the cards for French tuning here. I'm not even sure if we actually made any French tuning cards. This is something I've only been doing for the last probably 5 years. What you do with French tuning is, I have a full complete video on this, but you're going to start at 3 yards, and then you're going to move back to 9 yards. On your target, you're going to put a piece of string, and that piece of string is going to need to just dangle across that target. And what you're going to do at 3 yards, you're going to shoot until you hit that target, or until you hit that string. And if you don't hit that string, you're going to move your sight. And what you're going to do with your sight is exactly follow the arrow like we talked about earlier. Then, once you're splitting that string at 3 yards, you're going to move back to 9 yards. And at 9 yards, you're going to shoot, and if you shoot, you're going to actually move your rest in the opposite direction of what you're impacting. So if you shoot and you miss a string to the right, you're going to move your rest to the left in just 2 super tiny increments. If you're shooting to the left, you're going to move the opposite, and you're going to move your rest to the right. Again, super tiny increments until you split that string. I'll do this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth several times until I feel like everything is absolutely perfect. This is a really easy method to do. You're so close, it's really hard to make a bad shot at that range, and it is a really effective way of getting your sight and your rest both absolutely perfect, centered up, and shooting well. So we'll run through this again. At 3 yards, you're going to aim for that string, and if you miss, you're going to move your sight and you're going to follow your arrow. At 9 yards, you're going to shoot for that string, and if you miss, you're going to move the opposite of your arrow impact. So if your arrow impacts to the right of the string, move your rest to the left. If your arrow impacts to the left of the string, you're going to move your rest to the right. So that's going to center your rest up, and those methods are going to center your rest up and get those absolutely perfect. Now the last thing that we're going to do is probably the most important, and you could probably, I've been known to do this in the past, you can probably skip all the other methods of tuning if you want to, and skip right to broadhead tuning. Each one of those tuning methods is going to get you that much closer to being perfect. If you skip those other tuning methods and skip right to broadhead tuning, instead of being that close and having just a little bit of fine-tune adjustment to do, you're going to be that close, and you're going to have a lot of adjustment to do. So you can go straight to broadhead tuning if you want, but I really recommend that you do the sight your bow in. Definitely don't do anything until you sight your bow in. But you can skip the walk back tuning and the paper tuning and the modified French tuning if you would like, and skip straight to broadhead tuning, you're just going to be way further off than what you would be if you'd have done those methods. So broadhead tuning is a little bit more complex. You can see here, here's the flashcard that we have for broadhead tuning, and it's pretty simple. What you're going to do is you're going to shoot. What you're going to do is you're going to shoot your field points at 20 yards. You're going to shoot your field points until your field points are hitting dead on accurate. Now, I don't recommend that you do that and then shoot a broadhead right behind it, because it's a good way of messing up an arrow and messing up a broadhead. So you're going to shoot, make sure your bow is sighted in, and pull those arrows out. Once your bow is sighted in at 20 yards, you're hitting the bullseye every time. Then you're going to shoot your broadhead. You're going to shoot the exact same arrows with a broadhead on them, and shoot the broadhead of your choice. If you're shooting a mechanical broadhead, go out and buy a cheap broadhead, a 3-blade, a 2-blade cut on contact, something like that, and use this method anyway, even though you're shooting a mechanical broadhead, and they're supposed to, and most of the time do, fly like a field point, because this makes your bow, it tunes your bow better, and it just makes it more efficient, makes it hit harder, makes it shoot just a little bit faster. So what you're going to do is you're going to see here, if you have an impact, this is where your field points would have impacted. If your broadheads impact into a different spot than your field points, there's going to be some adjustments that you're going to make, and they're going to all be to your rest. If you're hitting high, that means your arrow is actually kicked up a little bit with that broadhead on it, and it's going right where it's pointed. So if you're hitting high, you're going to need to raise your knocking point up or lower your rest. If you're hitting low, you're going to need to raise your rest up or lower your knocking point. So do these things in super small increments. It does not take much to get these things to move a lot. You may move your rest just super small, and most of these adjustments are going to be made to your rest simply because you're going to have a D-loop on, and the D-loops, you're not going to untie your D-loop. And if you did it like we talked about in the video where we talked about rest installation, your D-loop should be where it's supposed to be anyway. So if your impact is high with your broadheads, lower your rest down. If your impact is low from your field points when you're shooting your broadheads, raise your raise your rest up. Now, same thing. This can also be another way of showing stiff spine or a weak spine. If you're hitting to the right, you need to move your rest to the left. If you're hitting to the left, you need to move your rest to the right. If you do that and you hit, your broadheads are hitting to the left and you move your rest to the right, and you don't find any improvement in it, then it's probably an indication that your arrows are too stiff. They're coming out, they're flexing, they're pointing to the left, and they're just not stabilizing as they fly. So if you do these methods of moving your rest the opposite direction of where your broadheads are impacting from the center, and it's not making any difference, then you're going to have to make an arrow change. So we'll run through it real quick. If you hit to the left with your broadheads versus your field points, move your rest to the right. If you hit to the right with your broadheads versus your field points, move your rest to the left. Just the opposite of where you're impacted. If you do those things and it does not make any difference, then it means you have either, if you're hitting to the left, you have a stiff spine. If you're hitting to the right, your spine is too weak and you need to pick up some different arrows. So, like I said, this is the most important, this is the longest video in the series. This is the most important thing that you guys can do, and a well-tuned bow will outshoot your abilities. At least with me, it outshoots my abilities. So a well-tuned bow will outshoot your abilities, and it'll also be more efficient, shoot faster, shoot harder, and just generally be a better performing bow. If you want to download these right here, which I highly recommend that you do, we'll put a link in the description down below. Please be sure to subscribe. Please be sure to ring that bell down there by the subscribe button so you get notified whenever we put up new videos. Please be sure to check us out on social media under Ike's Outdoors. We're on Instagram and Facebook as well. And I appreciate you guys watching these videos.